Thank you, Amber. And now we want to welcome back to our newscast Senate President Colin Hanabusa, who, of course, is a congressional candidate for the 1st Congressional District in the special election that's coming up in May. Things have heated up there. And first of all, good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here, Dan. Senate President. Really appreciate it. First of all, let's talk about how things are heated up. A lot of polls have been coming out, and lately the polls really kind of show it's a toss-up between you, former Congressman Ed Case, a fellow Democrat, and Republican Charles Dejoux. What do you make of these latest numbers? You're slightly behind in all three of them, but once again, within the statistical range of...
It's all within the margin of error. And one of the most interesting things about these polls is that people are now nationally taking a look at Hawaii and determining what is it about the way Hawaii voters vote that they're just not getting up there. And I think that that's a great thing, that people finally recognize that what many of us have known all along is that Hawaii is different, and the way people vote in Hawaii is different, and people do not like to tell people how they're going to vote.
And you're referring to special interest groups coming in here, or what exactly are you referring to?
Well, no, I'm referring to mainland posters. I think KITV used one. Everyone that I know of has used one, and the reports on the mainland have been that even the guys who think that they knew Hawaii are saying, you know, there's something different there, because you can't explain how this race has closed in just a matter of months.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, you have been campaigning on really two things. One is that you're a collaborator, that you work with people, you've worked within the legislative process, you've had that experience. And another is the fact that you'll go up there and you'll support the president. You'll support the president's policies, that you've backed many of his policies. Let me throw this hypothetical out there. Wouldn't it be the best for the Democratic Party if you or Ed Case stepped down to make sure that this seat was held by a Democrat? Has that discussion ever been tossed about there? Is it to be a collaborator and to be an absolute supporter of the Democratic Party to make sure that seat stays in Democratic hands? Wouldn't that be the best thing for the party? And also to prevent mud from getting on President Obama's face if a Republican wins this seat?
Well, I think that the other part of being a Democrat, if you look at the history of the Democratic Party in Hawaii, is we've always given people choices. We've always had the contested primaries. I don't know if there's any major race where we haven't had a contested primary. We've given people the choices. And I am very confident that no matter what happens, that this seat will remain a Democrat seat.
So, you know, we don't want to take the risk that a Republican could win this seat and hold it for a number of months and perhaps even gain momentum and win the general election in November. Don't you think that that's a risk? And also, once again, this will be huge national news if a seat in the state that Barack Obama was born in goes to a Republican. Is that something that should be a concern to you and your opponent, Ed Case, both Democrats?
You know, I believe that it will always be a consideration or a concern, but I think it's got to be outweighed by one thing, which is that the people have got to make that decision. And I think, you know, there's 14 people running, 5 Democrats, not just Ed Case and myself. There are 5 of us who are running. And I think that this is politics in Hawaii.
Ed Case was backed by received the endorsement of the Honolulu Advertiser.
Yes.
Was that something that you were disappointed in? Were you surprised at? What is your take on that situation? Is that something voters should really pay attention to?
Well, voters are going to pay attention to what they feel is relevant to them. But, you know, newspapers are just like every other organization. We have a change in the publisher, you have a change in who's the editor, and, of course, the philosophy is going to change. What it does do is it reflects how the present editorial board may feel. But if you read the editorials, you will see that they went at great lengths to make a decision and to analyze both of us. And I felt that though they gave Ed the endorsement, that it wasn't necessarily a non-endorsement. Clearly, you read that editorial, the decisions were being made between myself and Ed. And, you know, I am very grateful that they gave us the opportunity to come before us, because I think that's all part of our process.
What's next? What do you do in the coming weeks? As there's such a different election, because it's a mail-in election, people start voting early on. Now, I know that you've gotten a lot of union support. What do you do in the next couple of weeks to try to ensure that you win this special election? What's the plan right now coming from this day forward?
You know, it's the way we've looked at this election from the very beginning. We've always said this is going to be the people's election. We have always said that the grassroots, our people support, people who are phone banking for us, sign waving for us, canvassing for us, that they are really going to be the heart of our campaign. And it's proving itself to be exactly that. They are the ones who are going to help us win this election, because that's the one distinction that my campaign has over the other two.
And one last question. What's going to happen in the legislature? Things that could possibly affect your race. Now, the legislature is poised to, of course, they're trying to close this huge budget deficit without doing too much to services, which have already been cut to the bone, depending on who you ask. What kind of tax increases or increases in services can we see that you think is going to come out of the legislative session? Of course, the budget process is still a fluid thing, and the session doesn't end until Wednesday. What are some of the things we will see for sure as far as tax increases?
Well, I think, as you know, the barrel tax has already passed, and that will be something that we will see. The governor will have enough time to veto it, and we would still be in session to override that. But I think that the rest of the budget is still in a fluid process. I have not seen any indication, for example, that the general excise tax will come up. There are small other bills that are being looked upon. One is the TAT, for example, about 50% from the county share. And also there are things like raiding special funds. So how the two finance and ways and means chairs finally decide that that budget is going to balance out, they have until Friday to do so. And so stay tuned, because that's the way we're going to find out how they finally decide to balance this budget.
All right, Senate President Colleen Hanabusa wearing two hats, of course, leading the Senate and running for Congress. Ma'am, thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.